Yes, guys, and welcome back to TCP Live with no Alex, as George likes to say, Nancy Penny. Just the two boys, me and George. Oh, I can't wait for this. I'm actually so excited.
Take
How are you,
over.
George?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm not too bad. I'm excited to kind of talk Liverpool, talk everything together with you. I think it's really a lot of interesting stuff that's coming along. And of course, I know TCP Live has a general relationship section, so I'm ready for that. I've brought notes
Oh,
for
Lord.
Alex to do, and I feel like you can speak from experience as another man in a relationship. So.
I don't know about that. Well, actually, it was like because Alex was he was showing us his Hinge profile last week, and he did say that he was gonna update us on the progress and the changes after the changes that we told him to make. I think good advice as well. I thought it was excellent advice for him to just boost that profile up and just
Incredible. Like that first photo, right, with another girl is a big no-no. Absolute no-no. You can't. It's like
it's
the one
actually
dating sites that you can't
it's
do.
scandalous. It's actually so I tried to be as nice as I possibly could, and again, maybe some might not agree with what I said, but I think your first picture just has to be yourself, and there has to be like a lot of emphasis on your face because that's ultimately the first thing that people are naturally attracted to. I think. But yeah, let's see how he's doing that. So he's not here this week. He'll be back next week. So it's just your two tactico nerds, me and George. So yeah. By the way, actually, I want to talk about this. So I got a haircut, got a trim yesterday, and I'm not happy with it. He's done it way too short. Like the volume is not there.
What is with the UK and barbers these days? Alex has an issue with his haircut. You've got an issue with the haircut. We need to have some like good old school, not to be rude, but like you've got to get people like Jamaican barbers give you the best lineup.
They do.
100%.
Yeah. Honest, and the thing is, like I like my barber, but he wasn't there, so I had no other time to go to book a different day and go in because I need it for this Sunday. And so I just gambled. I thought, you know what, I've just got to risk it with this guy. And I always emphasize, like, don't take too much off the top. Just a little bit. Just a little bit, please. And then he cuts so much off. Like, it's just, oh, my God.
And
look, the hairline, I said my hairline's not too bad.
Should I do the whole typical thing of show us the hairline? What is this thing, by the way? You have a strong hairline. I think you're good.
It's average. It's nothing. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's one of those ones where it's not receded. It's just stayed at the same level. But you could argue maybe it is a little bit high, but it's not. It's not like Jovino.
No.
It's not.
You know what it is? You've got like increased forehead, and then you've got, I call it the cul-de-sac. That is an issue. When you've got double cul-de-sacs, you got to get it off.
You need to sometimes people need awareness. When it's not salvageable, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
You need a good friend to just take you aside and say, "Listen, mate, just let it go."
Yeah. Oh my God.
You know who needs that?
Yeah.
Tim Lewis.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I'm sure he's a lovely, lovely guy, but jeez.
Him and Trump rival the toupee-esque off. It's insane.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy. But you've always got a sharp trim. Always a good shape up. Always.
Do you like it today?
Do you like it? I like it when it's fresh out because when I get a fade, I like the fade to the last. But some people like it to marinate. It's a marination process where after a week, that's the peak spot. But
I'm a marinator. I hate my haircut for a bit, and it's just like, I don't know why. And I love the feeling, but it's just I hate it, and I feel like I don't grow into it as much. And I'm a bit of a girl with my haircuts. I'll be honest with you. Pretty much everything else in my life, I'll do hand-me-downs, but I need my haircut every 4 to 6 weeks. I need it.
Oh, 4 to 6, or I always do it every 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, you're not too bad.
Yeah. Once it gets to that post 4 week territory, it's all over the place. It's just not salvageable. But oh my God, yeah, no, it's crazy. But let's see who's in here. I've actually got control over comments as well, as does George, obviously. So let's see. Hello to Vive Lad. Yep, sensational thumbnail. Alex Forder is ridiculous, and the fact that he's able to do it so quickly and it's crazy. I just like
It's an
usually.
art.
Yeah,
I think.
usually Alex like gives him. I think he gives him like title ideas, etc. Like he was asking us like, "Oh, any titles?" I have no idea. I generally don't, but he just pulls it out the bag every single time. Um, oh, who else have we got in here? Don't know. Always here. Thank you for tuning in. Who else have we got? Guna76. You can see. Yeah, I mean, so this is basically where my hairline is. It is around there. And that's not too bad. I think that's okay.
I think you're fine. You know what I
Yeah.
think? You can't have your glasses be larger than your hairline. So you have
Yes.
your glasses. If you have more forehead than your glasses, you
Yeah.
got to take it.
See,
You're done.
I absolutely hate wearing glasses as well. I have to wear
Mhm.
glasses today because I need to read the comments. Otherwise, I'm just not going to be able to see anything. I absolutely hate it. And my glasses, like, yeah. I don't. Do you wear glasses, George?
I used to. I got laser though. I
Oh,
bit the
did you?
bullet. I went under the
Oh,
knife, and it's like the best decision I ever did because I can't. I'm one of those people that just can't touch their eyes, so I could never do contact lenses.
oh,
But I was,
really?
yeah, I was legally blind. Like I was really bad.
Oh god.
Like
I've always thought about actually doing laser, but it's just that like really, really, really small percentage, like really small percentage
yeah.
that just like scares me.
So you
But
know what? And honestly, like it is a very scary procedure because you're awake and everything. So what they do, right, is they've got a machine that forces your eyelids open. And you see like this machine go in and you don't see the laser, but you can like there's like a blinding light. And so
yeah,
it like happens while you're awake. And it is crazy, like in terms of just getting your mind through it. And I remember I had to get like a needle with it because I had like part of my retina was like scratched
yeah,
from before. So they
yeah.
had to fix that before they did laser, right? And this guy had to put a needle in as the needle was coming in. Like it wasn't super painful, but it was like a little bit painful. But just this idea, this needle and thing coming to your eye, and you got to like keep it open, was mad. It was
How
mad.
how how long is the process? Is it pretty quick
Well,
or
well, it depends. Like it does depend on the surgery, but like
yeah?
the like to be honest, it's like 10 minutes, but the recovery could take like a month or so. So
Oh,
it's
really?
kind
A
of
month? Like that long?
yeah, yeah. Like because I had like it's called PRK, so it was like it wasn't quite the exact laser. It was like an older version, and
Yeah,
so when you do that, it's like a couple weeks where your eyes are like really scratchy and like they're kind of blurry, and then all of a sudden there's just a day where you see the light literally it goes from blurry to like crystal clear. And I remember, I swear to God, I was like walking to work and I remember like suddenly being able to see the veins on tree leaves. And I was like, what is this?
it's like
This is like
what is this?
Spider-Man. Oh my God, I've got my like powers back. So yeah, no,
Oh man.
it was incredible.
No, I do. I cannot stand wearing glasses. Let me tell you, now, I absolutely hate it so much. Like, but
How do you
I'm just
lose them?
scared of doing laser. I'm just scared. I'm just have this feeling where I'm just going to be permanently blinded. And yeah,
To be fair, you don't want to screw up your sight. Like the
yeah,
sight is one of those things. But you know what? It's kind of one of those things. I think once you get over the fear and you do it, I could never go back, mate. I could never.
yeah,
I would like going back to wearing glasses because for me, I'd lose them, and it's expensive. Like not that
yeah,
laser's cheap, but if you keep losing your like your glasses, I even had to have sunglasses that were prescription because I was a mess. Like I was legit legally blind. Like on my driver's license, I had to have glasses. It was that
yeah.
bad.
Same in mine as well. Mine
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so
Oh,
it's life-changing.
no, no, I've always that's interesting because like the cost of the number of times you have to get your glasses repaired or you get a new prescription, etc.
Yeah,
Will laser in the long term be cheaper? Yeah, could be. Never know.
as long as you're
So
keeping this for, like, 5, 10 years, and you know what? I can't remember when I did it, I think I did it near enough COVID area now,
yeah,
and, like, yeah, no, it's supposed to last you pretty much most of your life. Maybe you have to do it, like, when you're 70 if you want it done again,
yeah.
but, yeah, no, best
No.
decision I ever made.
I'm just currently a contacts guy, just contact lenses. I don't mind putting them in. To be fair, I was actually scared at the start. Actually, How am I going to get this thing, this thin piece of
Yeah,
whatever plastic? Yeah, it's a thin piece of plastic in my eye. It did creep me out a bit, but no
yeah, yeah.
contacts for now. Maybe in the next few years, laser. We'll see. We'll see. Jonathan K, thank you for being here. Big up to the panel in the chat. Alex is here as well. Love you, Alex. Love you, Alex. Next week we want to see the profile. We want to see it. We want to see the updates. We want to see the progress and just all of that.
I'm invested at this point. If I don't see a date, I consider it a failure.
So yeah, okay. 1 day or 2 dates?
Okay.
Because it'll be 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks since we gave him the advice. So
a callback is a pretty strong thing. That's some seriousness. So
then you're in.
Then you're in. At least a date. At least a date. If you get a callback, that's on you.
Callback,
brother.
then you start. Okay, you've done the groundwork. You've managed to get yourself slightly in there, and now you just. That's the hard part. Is always the start. The start's always the hard part.
You know what though? I was like one of those people. I love first dates. I'll be honest with you. I got excited for them. First dates were like my favorite thing. You could just do whatever because I love doing adventures like hiking. I would do like rock climbing or stuff like that because my whole mindset was if I didn't like the girl, I could focus on the activity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm exactly so. So it's like, that's why I said to Alex, like, I think Alex disagrees. I like to have an activity, always an activity. I don't care what it is, but we've got to be doing something because then
100%.
And it's also a good icebreaker as well.
For sure.
Just an activity.
And if it goes well, you're both naturally hungry and it leads into a longer date naturally.
See, George knows the game. And that, like I'd say, the best time for that is like uni days. Uni days, that's the peak.
I used to have a thing. If you took a girl to Starbucks, you were dating. That's too expensive. Ain't no one going to Starbucks if you're not together.
It just did. Oh yeah, first year uni, that was like the best. But then I did an engineering degree, so after that, it was you just invested in the studying and stuff. It was so draining.
To be fair, did you find first year like you had a lot of time as an engineer? Like I know I did pre-med stuff, so I think I was similar. Like I had 30-hour work weeks, like with labs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was. It was kind of a case of like, I think by second year is when I reached my dating prime. It was like, and not even that, actually third year, to be honest with you, because first and second were like packed in our schedules as like pre-meds. And then third year, you kind of did stuff that you liked a little bit. And so you got a little bit more time and like you could go out a bit more. That was like my prime years when I was 20.
No, for engineering is so demanding. Like, first year is fine because first year it doesn't count towards your overall mark. So it's like just do enough to not be embarrassing. I shouldn't really say this, but I remember first year uni, my first exam, and it was in a hall, and it was like multiple choice, and I had no idea what was happening. Genuinely, I didn't really revise much for it. I just thought, I'll be okay. I feel like I understood the lectures ish, but I had no idea. So tactically, I was thinking the guy next to me looks smart, and I know I don't condone this. Don't do this because you'll understand after I say what happened. And I copied all his answers. I knew this was going. I could see all of his answers. I copied them all, and I thought, all right, I salvaged this. I got 20%. 20%. And from that day, I was like, do you know what? I ain't trusting anyone. I'm going to do my own work. I'm going to revise. After first year, I took it so seriously, and I ended up with a pretty good mark. But yeah, that was the humbler. That was my
humbler.
The humbler. Statics and dynamics, year one. Oh my god, I was in the trenches.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember her first year horror story was. I remember I did calculus. And legitimately, I was failing every test. And I wasn't bad at math. So like, it was a shock for me. It was like the one thing going from like high school to university. I was like, wow, I'm not at the level right here, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but I legit just locked in on the final exam. And our prof said, listen, because it was a really low average, if you guys do well on the final exam, I'll make that worth like 90% of your mark. And the rest of the coursework, 10%. But you have to let me know beforehand. And I was like, I got to risk it. I'm failing. Like at this point, I'm failing. Like, what do I have to lose? I'll fail the class if not. So through a dart, I did really well. And I ended up getting like a really good grade in the class. And like every one of my friends are like, how did you scam this? And I was just like, listen,
trust
boys.
Me, a lot of uni, I've always said it, like a lot of uni, there are in my like course, there was like 190 of them. A lot of them are naturally just smarter than me. I just know it. So
Yeah.
I've got to play the game. I've got to find ways for me to get to that top. And I in the end, I ended up with, I think, the 10th highest mark in our year. But I wasn't the
That's
smartest. I
brilliant.
genuinely wasn't the smartest. I was thinking different ways to just tactically outsmart the market. Won't call it cheating. We'll call it tactically outsmarting the market. And
I
yeah,
like that.
but no,
The
it was
tacticos never learn, guys.
yeah.
It's
You
it's the
see,
day
oh,
one. You see?
it's not just football. It's everyday life. It's everyday life. Oh god, but back those uni days, and that was actually the time where I actually could watch a lot of the Arsenal youth games as well because so much free time. But just man, I know you are the youth guru for Arsenal.
You, you know what? It was incredible going through. I don't even know how I got into it because most of like my Twitter career, I don't know if people like talk, but I did this as a joke and as a bet with my friends
Yeah.
where they would like go on social media, like and just try to, I don't know, go on Twitter and just start talking rubbish or whatever. And so I think I did it back in like 2020, and that was like my first start. And I had like a Saliba picture, and I was Saliba season for all the
I
OGs.
remember, George. I remember. we were early days. We were early days when
God, how long did it take for people to convince me to get an actual photo at this point? I feel like I'm like you with
yeah.
certain things on technology, where it's like you're way better, but you're afraid of it.
Yeah, I'm afraid of it. So last week I was so scared because I was having so many issues. But then I thought, okay, I've got it working. I'm not going to touch anything now. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, nah, it's just. But I don't think I'm not too bad. But it's kind of like when it's pressure time and it's like a live stream and right, we need to go now. That's when
Yeah.
I'm like, oh god, yeah, it really needs to, yeah, nah. But no, enough waffling now. But
This
the
is
actual
heritage.
football,
This is heritage.
this was heritage. We had to start off
Heritage.
with this, but the football, George.
Yes.
So I've actually not been on any pods since last week, so missed. I didn't manage to give my opinions on the Bournemouth game, the Shakhtar game. But I'm gonna start with you actually, and with the Bournemouth game. And I don't think we need to go too much into it, but just briefly. And
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on? So we spoke about it, the lineup in general before the game, and we actually messaged each other, me, you, and Alex. We spoke about the lineup and things we didn't particularly like beforehand. So when people say, "Oh, it's all good saying it after the game," it's in hindsight. But some of the things we said that was before ball was kicked. So your thoughts on the lineup, how the game was before the red card, and then our approach afterwards, just briefly. Yeah.
I think like so when you're breaking down the game at first, I thought that's a very flat midfield. And
Yeah.
one of the first things that when what we were messaging was, okay, so when you've got a flat midfield, generally speaking, you've got to compensate by pushing your fullbacks a lot higher up. Because what you end up doing is by having such a flat midfield, you're ideally going to have two center backs in your rest defense. Whereas I think in general terms, we do have operated with three center backs and we kind of alternate between the two. But when you've
Yeah.
got an extra body in that middle third, you're basically saying, okay, let's push the fullbacks high and wide and let's try to get our attackers inside a little bit more. But one thing that we ended up seeing was that both fullbacks were actually very conservative. From a Ben White standpoint, it's probably understandable given kind of his injury
Yeah.
situation at the time. But I was really shocked. I felt that Calafiori was the most conservative I had seen him ever
Yeah.
in an Arsenal shirt. And so then it became very confusing to me because by having Trossard on the left in this manner at Bournemouth, we relegated him back to the winger Trossard, which is not something that I like to see. And when you looked at our previous matchups in which Trossard was actually doing very well with Kai Havertz, it was because he was operating in tandem inside as a pseudo attacking midfielder. And really,
Yeah.
there's nothing fancy to say that Trossard inside is okay. As soon as you get him on the wing, I feel that he struggles with his ball retention. And I think he struggles at times to really gain the influence that he doesn't do when he is central. And so, from a dynamic standpoint, this is a fancy way of saying we had far too many behind the ball players in
Yeah.
our balance across the team. You had the three flat midfield, then you had the back four. So you had seven of your outfield players behind the ball. Then you analyze, okay, this is the first time this front three, front four have played together. So you're going to expect indecision. But it
Yeah.
got to a point where I felt like we broke the first press brilliantly in Bournemouth. And
Yeah.
then as soon as we got to the middle third, not even the final third, I thought there was indecision in the manner in which we were attacking. And you could see that there were some things that I think were beginning to develop, but really the game didn't get a chance to play out because I think just as we were starting to maybe at least attempt some of the balance issues within the
Mhm.
game and not through
Yeah.
Mikel's selection, we get the red card. And so, boom, that goes down. And I don't know, mate. I just felt like the decisions. This is where I rarely criticize Mikel, but I felt
Yeah.
he made the wrong decision in the subs. And I think if you were going to replace and add a defender like he was doing, then tell your fullbacks to go higher.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
then change something within the game. But what happened was we legitimately just swapped personnel and kept
Yeah.
the same tactics, so the same issues persisted. And then ironically, I felt like a lot of the changes that we saw later on in the second half with bringing on Martinelli, Gabby Jesus, and and Ethan Waneri were things that I was calling for
Yeah.
immediately at the red card. I mean,
Yeah.
if you football simple, mate, if you've got a connection issue, get a connector.
Yeah.
And I looked at this game and I felt like, okay, fundamentally, you've got Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard out of the team. So in terms of your front line, those are your two most influential on the ball players in our team, especially in
Yeah.
an attacking sense, but also out of possession. But let's not talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
On the ball, the most influential in the final third. And we basically played a front line that was primarily runners.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand. So you lose
Yeah.
that, and you don't even add one. So it didn't even have to be my choice or your choice of Ethan Waneri, but at least balance the 11 to which you have at least two runners and two creators. But we didn't quite do that, and it led to a really inefficient match, indecision across the board. So I felt like from Mikel to the players, the whole team just had a day of indecision.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that, and we talk about Mikel in such good light always. We always give him a
Yeah,
lot of credit and praise because he deserves it. He for me is an outlier of a coach. And I was thinking about Big Ange and what he's doing at Spurs. And sometimes naturally as Arsenal fans, we think, oh, he's rubbish, he's rubbish, he's rubbish. But I think sometimes subconsciously we compare him to Mikel and that makes us think he's rubbish. But in isolation, he's actually a pretty good coach with huge flaws, but he is a good coach. And I think with Arteta, despite the fact he's an outlier, he can make mistakes. And I do think in this game, I I think the Ethan Wanieri situation is very interesting because I think a lot of people would say throwing Ethan in a game against Bournemouth is not the best way to allow him to settle in an environment. And I would argue where, I wanted him integrated a lot earlier. I wanted him to be getting at least one start against Leicester and Southampton. And I mentioned how those two games, when we're talking about low risk mitigation, you are not going to get many more better games than those two at home in front of your fans. And we didn't necessarily see it. We saw an excellent cameo against Leicester when he came on. And by the way, in that moment, I actually thought that was a pivotal moment for Ethan and his selection going forward in the Arsenal team because if you remember, Gabriel Jesus could have easily came on against Leicester in that situation, in a game state in which we needed a goal. He threw on Ethan, and the rest is history. The level of impetus, the drive, the purpose in every single touch. It was fantastic, and we've not seen him at all since that. If you exclude the Bolton game, really,
Can
and
I ask you, like,
yeah,
so really quickly on integration, because this is a topic, right? So say you've got
yeah,
a youngster and you've got a very talented youngster like Ethan, and you're at the beginning of the season and you're laying like metrics and things that you
yeah,
want to at least see, right? I think 9 or 10 out of 10 Arsenal fans would sit there and say, I wanted cup cameos and the odd Premier League minutes, at the
yes,
very least for
yeah,
Ethan Waneri, right? I think me and you are a little bit more firm in saying I think we'd like to see some starts, but regardless, everyone agrees that Premier League minutes should happen. So
yes,
my question was, what's the game state? Because even Mikel had mentioned that we need to provide the right environment. And again, it's rare that I disagree with Mikel, but again, from the off, what game state would you ideally select? I don't know about you, but personally, I would look at the run of games of Southampton, Leicester, and yes, even though Bournemouth are a
yeah,
very good team, as pliable teams to play against.
100%, mate, 100%,
And
yeah,
so, whether it's a start or whether it's minutes, and to only accrue 60 minutes across that game or those run of games, is poor, let alone when the team is crying out for a connector, let alone
Exactly.
when
And
the Martin Odegaard is out.
that's exactly that. When with the context, this is where I get frustrated with the
With
context of
the
Martin Odegaard being
context.
with the context of Martin Odegaard out. I find it very strange that we've not seen him play substantial minutes since then. I really find it hard to understand, especially given the cameos that he's had have been superb. It's not the
Mhm.
case that he's not performing in these cameos. He's
No.
been fantastic, and I think. But the other thing I wanted to mention, going back to the Bournemouth game, is the fact that I wanted Ethan to start in this game for a number of different reasons, and I'll explain them a little bit in a second. But I think you can think that you'd want a certain player to start the game, whilst also acknowledging the fact that Arsenal are in complete control in those first 26 minutes
Yeah.
before the red card. Granted, we didn't create much, but like you said, I felt there were many moments in that game in which we broke the Bournemouth press, that first line of pressure, and they managed to get into the middle third, but then there was indecision, and that's where it was quite frustrating. There were moments in which, yeah, I think Trossard generally has had a poor couple of games personally, and he was at fault for not obviously just the misplaced pass to Saliba, which then Saliba makes the foul, but I just thought generally his overall play wasn't good. And I think with the Marino selection, now I didn't agree with it, having Marino in the middle of the park alongside of Partey and Rice, as you allude to, a very flat midfield. But if you're going to make Marino work at right centre mid, I'm a firm believer that you need to funnel your play predominantly through the left and finish through the right. The issue comes where a lot of times in that game, we were looking to, again, funnel through the right, and Marino is receiving the ball between the lines in tight spaces. The angles don't suit him there, and that's where the flow of the game and how we kind of then generate an attack as he receives the ball in those spaces kind of broken up. But I can't really blame Marino there because it's not his natural game to play in those pockets in tight spaces. Whereas when you see, actually, when I think in that game, a lot of good moments occurred with Marino when he was through the left and his passing. You could see what he was able to do there. But I think on the right, it just looked very awkward. And that's the frustration I had because, one, I don't agree with the Marino selection. But if you're going to play him, at least try and maximize his qualities as a box crasher, which we didn't necessarily do. I mean, we barely saw any half space crosses in the entire game. So I found it very difficult to understand the approach. And then when we went down to 10 men, Ben White's clearly carrying an injury, and for me, Arteta's even spoke about it. He says that one of the differences between right back and centre back is the demands of right back are higher than demands of centre back. So
Yeah.
I would have moved Ben White back at centre back when that red card occurred, and I would have how we would have said you could bring on Jesus for Trossard, you could make that change, but in possession, you've then got your Ben White, you've got Gabriel, you've got a Thomas Partey, and a Marino or Rice. You've got a back five there, and then you've got the four up front. Your front four, nominally, I would look to have Calafiori pushing higher up, to give you that width on the opposite side, because you already have Raheem Sterling. By the way, I didn't agree with the Raheem Sterling sub because you're taking off your only out and out direct runner, and as we mentioned, bringing on a centre back instead, and you're keeping Ben White deeper as well. It just felt like it made it very difficult for us to progress through the thirds when we did have the ball at times, and we had to resort to going long a lot, which we do naturally, but you then kind of leave the game more in a case of you're not in complete control. When the ball is long, we have a set structure that allows us to win the second ball, but ultimately when the ball is in the air, you're not in complete control of that. So we didn't see enough going through the lines on the ground, and I felt that having someone like Calafiori providing that width on the left, it would have been nice just to see that, but we didn't see these things. So yeah, it's just
And it's
really
difficult because
frustrating.
like when you jump to Shakhtar, you got a return to the 4-2-4, and I thought,
Yeah,
okay, we had a little bit more of a return to roles that were more cohesive. But again, it's just in the moment. I felt that Trossard had a really difficult night, ironically,
yeah,
that night as well. And I just think he's got into bad form. But the one thing that I wanted to ask you is I'm running the risk of seeing three players who, for me, are depth out of form with starters out. And that's a big issue
yeah. That is a big
between
issue.
Jesus, between Sterling, and between Trossard. And it's okay for one or two to kind of lose form, and you rely on others to step up in that situation. But I think the one player that I think me and you spoke about our frustrations with Gabby Jesus quite a bit, but ironically, the one person I think has escaped a little bit of criticism that he does deserve is Raheem Sterling,
Yeah,
ironically.
yeah,
And It might seem harsh because he hasn't been able to have some of the minutes, but from my perspective, he didn't go with England. And okay, fine, he comes on deadline day, but he
Hmm.
is fit
Yeah.
and things are different. But we're now at the point that we're at the end of October, mate. It's been August, September,
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
And and if we're sitting there and we were saying that he was one of the better band-aid applications to get when you're at that point, that assumes even if he gives your star men a rest, he has to give them good rest. He hasn't been able to do that. And so I, I struggle with the idea. Look, he does struggle out of possession. Let's just call it what it is. And I think he's
Yeah.
learning some of the triggers. But I mean, at some point, I don't know if it takes you more than 3 months to learn defensive triggers. And it's not
Yeah.
as though that we're talking about a player that hasn't worked with Mikel Arteta and hasn't at least had that ideology with Pep prior. So in many ways, we said the reason this band aid made sense is because there was a lot of transferable qualities from the past that could
Yes.
come into this team to give us
Yeah.
immediate impact. I'm not quite seeing it. And
No.
so I'm I'm left frustrated with it. And I don't know if it's not always a fault of one or the other. It's a fault of both Mikel and the player. But I sit there and I say, mate, we can't go throughout this season with those depth pieces at least not contributing into form. And we're running a
Yeah.
risk of I'm feeling a lot of the things I felt last year, December, when our forwards collectively lost some output form. And that can happen in a season. But when you do this and when these things happen, I'm really a firm believer in balance and
Yeah.
making sure you play relationships. So when
Yes.
there is a lack of form, play relationships that you trust. Think
Yeah.
about it yourself. You're at work, right? And you're having a tough week. You're having a tough month. Somebody sets you metrics. If you're going to sit there and constantly try to do the same thing, you're going to perform in the same worse manner. Just try to maybe get an email, do one task right, get some confidence, and build from there. And I do think at times I haven't seen us adopt adversity well,
Hmm.
sometimes, where I feel that we collectively go into this rut. And I'd like to see a better appreciation for balance to help that, whether that's from the manager, but even from the players, and build relationships. And I'm sure we'll get into Liverpool and how we dissect the injuries down the line. But I think the big thing I wanted to get across was you need to respect balance and relationships when you don't have your primary pillars.
Yeah.
And that's the
And
best thing as a coach that you can do.
yeah, and it's interesting because Arteta mentions many times about units and networks and structures across specific areas. And actually, I know I talk about it a lot, but that Miguel Molina lecture that I always keep referring to, but he mentions in that how they do a lot of collective training sessions, but a lot
Yeah.
of also like training sessions within specific units. So you can obviously immediately think of the right hand side combination of Ben White, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard working on certain things, and you hear about all these things, and Arteta mentions it many times in his press conferences as well about the importance of continuity. And this is where I actually think, when we're talking about differences between Pep and Arteta, one of the things is Arteta does value continuity a lot, and he doesn't necessarily like to chop and change amongst certain areas of the pitch, which I do also agree with. But then you kind of see it how we've looked to kind of balance out the right hand side in the absence of Bukayo Saka, and I don't really see the logic there, and Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling, we know is a runner, and we've not partnered him with someone who's strong on the inside to give you that underlap. Marino gives you that really well through the left hand side, but I've not personally seen much that he's able to do that with the same level of ferocity through the right. Maybe he can, but Sterling in general, I agree. I think he's had some really good glimpses. I thought when he came on against Leicester, he looked good. I thought Southampton was okay, but the biggest thing for me with Raheem Sterling so far is the out of possession work. I think it's been really bad,
Mhm.
specifically towards the right hand side. And I think it does take time for players to learn triggers. And we could go to Mika Marino, where we spoke about it. I think Mika Marino,
He's
he's going to
learning on
come
the
really
job.
good, but he's still learning the triggers, and it is going to take time. And the context behind that is the fact that for me, the left central midfield role in our squad is the hardest pressing job in the entire team. Whereas I'd say, in terms of the wingers, in terms of the number of different responsibilities there are, there aren't loads, so I don't know how it could take you that long to learn it. The intensity is that's a different question. We know what Bukayo Saka does from an intensity point of view, but in terms of the role and understanding it, I don't think it's the toughest. And it was quite frustrating. There was a period, I don't know if you remember it, in the Bournemouth game, where there was like a 5-minute spell where Marino and Sterling were kind of confused on who to pick up in the press. And then it felt like Raheem Sterling, for me, was the more at fault there. And that led issues with Ben White being overloaded as Bournemouth accessed further down the pitch, etc. So it has been frustrating, the out of possession work. I'm hoping that he will sharpen up there, and we give him a bit of time. But then I understand the argument that people say, Sterling's been playing football, and like you said, he's worked under Mikel Arteta before. There shouldn't be this long of an adaptation period, for him.
Look, we need to fundamentally we need to fundamentally find another transition threat.
Yeah.
I think Martinelli's slowly coming into form, which is nice to see, but it's been slow. I think he's had a very underrated start to the season.
Yes.
But and which a lot of people have glossed over for me.
Yeah.
But if you don't have Saka, it's not enough. Martinelli needs to almost be supernova with another transition threat. Because in our best periods, we've had Saka, who we can consistently rely upon as going, quote unquote, supernova. And we've had Martinelli, who's been very good. Even in the season that we talk about, the 22-23, with our most fluid attacking play, we had a Gabriel Martinelli contributing with 15 non-penalty EPL goals, which is crazy as a production. With Saka as well contributing to 25 goal and assist contributions that season, something ridiculous. So I think
2 seasons in a row now. 2 seasons in a row.
So for me, a successful title winner cannot rely upon only one player consistently hitting 25 to 30 goal and assist contributions. You can have one person going supernova. You do need another thrust. You need two thrusts because you keep the opposition guessing. If it's one player, it's easy to defend against. I don't care if you're Haaland, Saka, whatever big threat you want to say. If a coach realizes that the potential of a team is primarily through one pattern, it's easy to stop. And so fundamentally, what you should be looking to do, at least from a coaching perspective, is to minimize that predictability and promote that unpredictability.
Yeah.
And look, mate, I think like a lot of the solutions that we've talked about recently, even just in this Bournemouth game, they talk about unpredictability. I mean, one of the benefits, I hate to go back to it with Ethan, is I feel he's an unknown commodity. For as much as you talk about the benefits in possession, he's an unknown commodity to a coaching staff that are sitting there and looking at a very predictable Arsenal squad without Bukayo Saka. I mean, it was found in Athletic articles last year, which coaches were talking about how the left-hand side was a little bit predictable and how really stopping the right-hand side was the key to stopping Arsenal. Well, I would wager that's fine. We might be looking for a little bit more balance with our recruitment between Marino, Calafiori, and Raheem Sterling. However, in the interim, whilst we're nursing these injuries, which are a major detriment to our squad's balance and cohesiveness, we need to start adding connections that make sense, that help and platform the players that we do have. And then lastly, make sure that we're keeping that unpredictability so that coaches aren't sitting there thinking, I know how to set up and stop this Arsenal side. Because this is something that we're going to have to pivot to really early on. And we should normalize difficult periods as fans. I know it's difficult to contextualize when you combine it with dropped points, but we should contextualize that there's going to come a point in every season that a team does poor, even title winners, even City.
Yeah. And I think, but the key is, and we've mentioned it many times, the key is to not allow an isolated game to become a cluster. That is the key, and I always go back to last season where did Arsenal lose the title when we reflect upon the season? It wasn't at Aston Villa at home for me. It wasn't at Man City away from home getting a very good draw, contrary to popular belief. Where Arsenal lost the league, and it's crazy that we look this far back because that's the nature of the beast that we're up against, was in that December period where we lost to Fulham, we lost to West Ham, and you have to put Anfield there as well because it's a cluster. We didn't lose at Anfield, but, we took 1 point out of 9 in those 3 games. That can't happen. And this is where I don't know about you, but I got absolutely ripped to pieces when I said, upon reflection, I watched the game back. For me, despite the selection annoyances, despite the approaches, it was a bad day at the office. It genuinely was a bad day at the office. And that can
Yep.
happen. It's fine. It can happen, as frustrating as it can be. And I understand the fact that fans are nervous because of what Manchester City are capable of doing, what they have done for many years. But it's okay. It can happen. The issue is when it becomes a cluster of successive losses, and successive drop points. That is the key that Arsenal can't let happen. They can't allow that to happen this season. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of negatives, I think, from the Bournemouth game and the Shakhtar game. And just kind of briefly going into that again, a lot of negatives, I think, in the second half. I thought the first half, I think there was a lot of fluidity in our performance. I
Our
liked a lot
start
of
was
things.
actually
Yeah,
incredible. I really hated that people weren't able to appreciate. I felt like it
yeah,
was an incredibly strong and
yes.
springy start. Actually, like I thought that we really had an aggressive intent.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, I thought Shakhtar did quite a few interesting things in game in terms of their build-up and how they move certain pieces. And they did kind of confuse us at times, but then we went a little bit more man-to-man in certain scenarios. And I thought we pressed really well in that first half. And I actually think in general, when I'm talking about, like, what are the positives from that game? And we go into individuals and we spoke about it, I think, yesterday. And for me, outside of the known players who have done really well this season, the likes of Havertz and Raya, but for me, I think a big positive, and we actually spoke about it, our depth options not being, we're not performing at the level we expect them. But I actually thought Gabriel Jesus had a really encouraging performance, and I think it's an interesting one because we spoke a lot about Gabriel Jesus, where, when we're talking about his usage and how much he's on. And I hate doing that, but I think it's very important to put the wage in the context because then that's a good way to assess what a player is returning. And
Yeah,
ultimately, Gabriel Jesus, for me, since the 22 World Cup, before his post injury, he's not offered enough for the wages that he's on. And he's not offered us the level of consistency. But I think for me, if we look at that isolated game, I thought he looked really sharp. I thought he had the better of his fullback every single time. The final action inconsistencies were very severe. There were a lot of moments in which he displayed really poor actions in those situations. But a lot of the individual stuff that I saw from Gabriel Jesus in terms of before he entered into the final in towards the box and was looking to make that final action, outside of that, I thought he looked really good. And one thing about Jesus, I can never take
doubt
away
his
from him
defensive.
is his defensive work. His
Yep.
defensive work is always top drawer, and I don't think we can. It makes a difference. So, yeah, what were your thoughts on individuals in that game against Shakhtar, and any big positives that you could take away from it?
So for me, my top three performers were Thomas Partey, Kai Havertz, and Martinelli.
Yeah,
Um, and I felt like those three really shone in that match. And I think Kai Havertz had a brilliant game, especially in terms of facilitating. He was really, really good. And I thought Martinelli just grew with the goal. And you know what I love? I love at the post match. Did you ever catch that the post match interview where I forget
no, I
who was
didn't.
interviewing him? And he goes, "No, that's my goal." And I'm
Oh,
like, "Yeah, mate, I love that. I love
yeah,
when you go and because you know what? He needs it. He needs the confidence." And
yeah,
um, yeah, I know it's a touchy subject, but Thomas Partey has been. I had this debate with
yes, mate.
Alex. Is he
Yeah.
not our best performing midfielder this season?
I
I
mean,
kind of think so.
So, and before the Thomas Partey Defence League have been on my neck all season. All season they've been on my neck. But I feel like I would say I'm not too biased. And I've said that post Atlanta away, I think Thomas Partey is performing at a ridiculous level. His
I
level of
agree.
performance since then has been outrageous. And in that first half, all of the good play that we did came from Thomas Partey mopping up and winning second balls. And that level of defensive work that he's been doing recently is really positive for me because I don't think anyone can take away Thomas Partey. They can discredit Thomas Partey's on the ball quality. I think he's always shown that the ability to break lines and find spaces that other players aren't necessarily confident in doing so with the volume that Thomas Partey does. Now, obviously, there are drawbacks there where if he gives the ball away, you're leading to more transition opportunities, and we have seen that. But I think he's looking so sharp, and we'll go into the Liverpool game in a second. But yeah, I think this is a big positive, especially considering the fact that Mikel Merino, I'd say, is still learning the triggers. He's still learning things, and he will get there. But it's nice to see us have someone like Thomas Partey who's performing at a level that we can effectively ease someone like Marino in. Now, whether Arteta does that or not remains to be seen. But yeah, it's a massive positive.
It's huge, and I think there's actually a part of me that has a very controversial opinion.
Yeah.
But this is the
Okay.
show
Go
for
on.
controversial
Yes.
opinions.
Go on.
So we've got two youngsters that people are clamoring, and Miles Lewis Skelly and Ethan Winery. And you've got Mikel Merino, who is an older player, experienced, Declan Rice, prime age, two really young but
Yeah.
superstar talents. Mate, we're going to need Thomas Partey and experience to step up to bridge the gap. And you know what? If he continues the quality, there will be some very serious discussions, especially on my end, as a bridge to think about what it would mean to blood in the youngsters that we really feel have a part to play. And
Yeah.
it's going to be important for platforming purposes, maybe, because I have a look at it, and we have a lot of stuff to do, in my opinion, actually, in the
Yeah. We
transfer
do.
market. I think we've left ourselves short, or rather, well, no, I'll go that hard. I think we left ourselves short. I was disappointed in the summer. I think we did some things good and
Yeah.
some things not so good. And I
Yeah.
think we left ourselves short. And so I think a consequence of that is that we've got a lot more stuff that we've got to do. Your favorite Japanese player, he is not
Where is he,
somebody.
George? Where is he? So, sorry. Okay, now, all right. My head's on Mars now. Okay, right. So, the game against Southampton, I was there, and when Tomiyasu came on, I saw the standing ovation. Okay, now, firstly, it must be really hard for a player, who can't get fit, in terms of
Yeah,
mentally not being able to be able to regain fitness and have a run of games, and that's really hard. But from a fan's perspective, from my perspective, right, when not Thomas Partey, I've lost my head. When Tomiyasu came on against Southampton and I saw standing ovations, I'm like, I'm not standing up. I'm not falling for this. I'm not falling for this 5-minute spell. I am not falling for it. I need to see consistent games. And we'll get into the Liverpool game, but I'm thinking about all these injuries that we've got, etc., etc. And then
he is
it hit me when I was
indirectly
walking.
at fault for
Yeah,
a lot.
I was walking back from work and it hit me. It's like, where is he? Where is he?
Somebody,
These are the games we need Tomiyasu. Like, if there are games in which we need Tomiyasu, it's games like against Liverpool.
okay,
Surely he's not
okay. I'm gonna come with a serious question, but the first unserious question: can you explain to all the non, uh, the very white people, what is a benchode?
Oh God! Oh God! Oh. All right, I could use this word a lot.
Yes,
Oh,
you use it. I need my Rohan translator here,
so
and
it's pronounced Ben Jod. That's
benchode.
it's okay. So I can't now. I can't actually say it. I can't say it. The Indians in the chat will know. But yeah, I do rinse that word a lot, and I've
You need to
probably
redeem
rinsed
your
it many
Indian card,
times.
because apparently people were really upset with what was the food that you were saying that you did, pakora as well as
Oh my God.
samosa.
Okay. So I knew what it was, but so in our household we call it pakora is called a bhujia, a
Okay.
bhujia. So I never associated pakora being that, but I have eaten it, and do you know what? I came out of the stream. I came. I felt like that was the worst moment
Panic.
I think I've ever had on the stream, because like,
Yeah.
how can I not know that? How can I actually not know that? And oh mate, no, I was so embarrassed. But yeah, I do
Yeah.
know what it is now, but yeah, because I
That's
do have it a
hilarious.
lot. So, but yeah, no, Tomiyasu, oh, frustrating. But who
So
knows? He
sort
might be
of
fit. Who knows? He could be.
no, impossible. He's not
Oh,
real. He's a myth.
impossible.
He's a myth. He's a myth at this point. He's not part of the squad. He no, but you know what? I do think like it brings up like a really interesting question kind of quickly, where do you not think that players, like holding on to players too long,
Yeah,
that could, that are great people, that are great versatile options to the squad. And I'm looking at it, I look at our defense. Ironically, people clown Mikel for keeping to like regenerating the defense, but I think we've got to a point where our biggest deadwood is actually in defense. If you
yeah,
look between Kieran Tierney, question marks on Sinchenko, as well as Tomiyasu, um, Jakub Kivior probably has the least questions of those four, but still
yeah,
questions nonetheless, because he operates where his best performances come in one position for me, where he's serviceable in others, but doesn't have the same quality. I think he's really pretty solid left center back, but I think when he does play at right center back and in other areas, the quality is a little bit less.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a case where, again, you've got probably your biggest deadwood in the defensive phases, and we're looking at probably needing another couple defenders. And it's the issue that I'm having is I think that at times Arsenal have a tendency where we do keep people beyond their sell-by date, and I think the idea of the Tomiyasu contract was definitely a prove me if you're fit.
Yes.
But it's got to a point where, okay, surely at this point we need to move on. So you've given the contract to prove to you whether or not somebody can maintain their fitness, and they just haven't. And so this for me, and it's detrimental to a squad, because by keeping on to players like that, you run the risk of injury in the squad later indirectly. If you can't play, and this is the whole point with even the Raheem Sterling Band-Aid, if you're a Band-Aid solution, guys, the whole point of it is the Band-Aid actually stops bleeding to some level. Like, you know what I mean? If the Band-Aid isn't doing it, you're not doing anything to stop an issue. And look, there's always context, and you want to make sure that you give people the benefit of the doubt, especially the club, because we don't have the information directly in front of us. But I do, like, the Tomiyasu situation frustrates me, as I think it does a lot of fans as well. Because you can see ruthless application in other parts of the squad. And then in some parts of the squad, it's not. And by the way, that's normal. Like, I want to normalize subjective bias for a certain extent. I am biased. I like players that are physical. Everybody on Twitter, if you could describe a George V_AFC player, I think you could at this point. I'm biased to a particular type.
It's all right.
Oh my God, mate. That is my dream player.
That is your play. That is your type, and I'm the same.
You know what? If you had a midfielder, for me, he was the GOAT. He was my GOAT midfielder, actually. I don't know about you.
Was it? Yeah.
He is for me. If I talk about a player that could do 6, 8, 10,
center back,
put in any center back, I could put in any situation. And ironically, I don't even think that he got the most out of his career, but that's another topic for another day. I think so. That's my type. And I guess where I'm going with it, every coach will have their bias, and that's okay. Part of the problem is I hope that we've got enough people to challenge the status quo. Often enough and early enough. Because at times, throughout our tenure with Mikel, there has been times where Mikel is such a genius, and I talked about this in the other pod, that he almost needs somebody that he respects to shock him. Because he will think of solutions that sometimes are more complicated than what the simple answer may be. And to go back to this point, I feel sometimes this is a case with squad management and squad decisions. And Tomiyasu, for me, represents one of those where it's like, he's such a brilliant character, such a brilliant profile, and such brilliant versatility that you can understand reasons why he's in the squad. It's not egregious. You can understand it, no doubt. But then it's like, okay, well, if you've got now multiple seasons, like last year around December, were we not complaining that we maybe needed another right center back? I mean, Mikel made it quite known last January, I felt, that he wanted another defender and was denied by the board, personally. And we still haven't addressed that. And even the player that we gave another contract that is supposed to be that hole hasn't been able to do it. And now we're left in a situation where, I'm sorry, we're asking Ben White, who's probably on one hamstring, looks like it, to play again. And it's frustrating. It is frustrating. I mean, even Zinchenko, another Band-Aid left back option, who again isn't my cup of tea in every game state, but could be serviceable, is another one. So it's just it's a case of, again, context is important. So I want to acknowledge that on one hand, but on the other hand, there needs to be a little bit more ruthless consistency, I would call it. Not application, but consistency. In terms of
across the board. And the Tomiyasu one's very interesting because he's such, like you said, his versatility, the quality that he offers in multiple different positions in different game states, is ridiculous. But when you have someone who's just not able to get fit, it's so frustrating for a fan, and I think the contract, as you alluded to, it screamed for me. We rate you as a player, but we don't rate your availability. Prove it to us now. So, and we've gone, we're what, October now, end of October, approaching November. We haven't seen him play. It's, you have to draw the line somewhere, as tough as it is at times. But yeah, it's just so sad, that situation,
Well, in
because
the same way, aren't you doing the same logic with Gabriel Jesus to a certain degree, where you're saying, listen, there are qualities that you can offer, but if you're not going to consistently offer those
mm,
qualities enough, are you
yeah.
justifying your wage and your use or your resource in the squad?
Yes. And this is where I'm a little bit more lenient to Tomiyasu, because he's not on. I don't think he's one of our. I don't know what he's on exactly, but he's not of the Gabriel Jesus wages. And that's
No,
where
I
I
think
have.
he's on like 120-ish now because
Yeah,
he did get a
I mean
bump, but
that's still a significant sum, right? And we
yeah,
still need to see more from him. But that's where I'm a little bit more lenient, especially the fact that we paid what 16 million for Tomiyasu when we signed him
yeah.
back in 2021. So yeah, it's frustrating, but
You know what this reminds me of? I had such an out there. So in my background, normally I'm an exercise kind of scientist. That's what I do normally, in my day job. And I had this really drastic theory. And
yeah.
it reminds me a little bit of this discussion. And I said, do you know what would be the absolute best thing to combat obesity? Is if you made it mandatory that for every price beside it in brackets was the calories that meal was.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think because what we're talking about is not just the price and squad management to replace them, but we're talking resources, right? So if you pair the wage and you try to say how many minutes are there being used with this wage, if you cross the 200K barrier, I
Yeah.
think on average you should play at least 75% of matches and contribute to at least
Yes.
a third of your output if you're an attacker. At
Yeah.
least contribute to a
Yeah.
third of your whatever total you're talking about. If you're a defender, same thing. If you get on the 250 mark, that is superstar wages. If you hit that,
Yes.
that's the expectation.
Yeah.
Now, under 200, you can start to sit there and make leniency towards it. And in the same way that I would argue that you put calories next to a price, you can sit there and you can start to say, where am I going to put my daily intake? Where am I
Yes.
going to take my daily team management and allow it towards that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is that's the question. It's a debate, and it's all going to be a matter of balance, isn't it? At the end of the day, but it's frustrating. It's
It
frustrating,
is
and I can
frustrating.
just
Yeah.
tell. I know a lot of people will start to comment and say, another defender, but don't be surprised.
Don't be
I actually
surprised.
think
Don't be
we could have
surprised.
at
It's
least
coming.
two come in with four
Yeah.
leaving.
And it just yeah, it depends on what but yeah, it depends on what profile you're looking for. But yeah, we do need defenders, especially when you look at the context. It's crazy. But don't know, as I said, about the lecture of the Mika Molina. So we
She's
are
coming.
actually going to do this. Me and George, we're going to do this. We are going to do this. I'm going to send it to George as well. He's going to watch it. But I don't know about the copyright issues though with it. So that's something that's a
We've
little
got to
bit.
figure. We definitely should put this behind a patron paywall kind
Yes,
of thing.
but we definitely can do the Tiago Motta thesis, because that is available
Yes,
for anyone. That's available publicly, and you don't have to pay
we
for
should
that. So
start with that so that
yes,
people, and then we can maybe go to the Molina lecture if you guys
thing is,
enjoyed that stuff.
it's very thorough. The Tiago Motta thesis is very thorough. There's a lot. Now, who am I to say this to someone who is a very good coach? But a lot of it is a bit of waffle. A lot of it's a bit of a waffle. There's some, but like I'd say like 80% of it's really good. 20% of it's a little bit of waffle. But
Let
yeah,
me.
we'll definitely
I
look to
hate to
do that.
break. I hate to break it to you. Most theses you've just
Yeah.
described. Most theses in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah. Wait, so in uni, like we have like so when you do a master's, you have to do like an. Well, actually, it might be the same for bachelor as well, but I had to do like an individual project, and
Right.
that's where you have like your massive report at the end, and a lot of it is like a 30% for me was like lit review, studying
Yeah.
papers and findings and stuff. Mate, a lot of it, honestly, I'm waffling out the skin of my
You
teeth,
have
like
to.
so much waffle.
It's
Um,
honestly, I feel like the more education that you get into, and this is like another thing where
yeah,
it's 90% more waffle than
yeah, it
what you do.
is.
Like at some point, the more you go to school, the less you know. I
Yeah,
really believe that.
yeah, I've literally just yeah.
Like
So
your world expands. Like when you think about it, you're like, oh, I learn about this topic and how this applies. And you're like, well, I didn't even understand the basic topic. Now I'm learning about how this changes that. And you're sitting there. it's not as simple as the XY change that you always do. So
It's not, mate.
not.
It's not. Bram was asking about the standing ovation is for the player, and we've got to encourage these guys to keep going. Now, trust me, I can tell you for a fact.
So
I'm
what
one
you're
of the biggest
saying?
passion. So what I'm saying is, I hate Tomiyasu, but I can tell you for a fact, I'm one of the biggest passion merchants when I'm when I'm at the ground. Like, I'm full on get behind the players, every all the chants and everything, apart from the cringe chants, everything. Like, I'm putting everything out there. I will support the players like to the top limit. Like, I remember the Leicester. I'm going to take a lot of the credit for the Leicester win because, like, my section, a big part of my section in the North Bank, there wasn't enough noise. When Ethan came on, he had that action. I went mental. I was like, come on now, we've got to get this. We've got to suck this ball in the net. Raise the levels, raise the noise. And no, I'm a massive passion merchant. Now, I may be a big nerd in terms of tactics, etc. But trust me, watching games on the first live, I'm a huge passion merchant. And that's why I don't like doing instant reactions, George, as well, because I literally
It ruins the persona.
Yeah.
No, we have a rule in my house because with the time change, most of our games are in the morning, like 10 a.m. or like, potentially even 7. And so a lot of times I've got a rule. I have to go to the basement to watch games because I'll yell even in the morning. So I have to go down in the basement.
my thing at home when I watch it, I've got to hoover the entire living room and the kitchen beforehand. It's got to be clean. That house has got to be as clean as I possibly can get it before I watch it. And so, like, there's the TV, and I always sit like maybe within 20 centimeters of it. I'm that close. Maybe that's why I've got glasses, to be fair. but I'm literally like,
TCP Live, where you get dating advice as well as medical advice, all in one in a tactical bow.
Oh man, but yeah, no. But now the big one, George, Sunday. The big one. A lot to talk about. Well, yeah, we can waffle a bit about this actually. So I think there's a lot of panic from Arsenal fans, especially with the way Liverpool are playing. Top of the league, everything seems to be rosy. The honeymoon period for Arne Slot, by the way, I think he's a very good coach. I don't think there's any fakeness to this. What we saw with Ten Hag back in the day with that early little nice run they had, but I think he's a really good coach. However, I'm actually really confident for this game. I'm actually really confident. And I know you are always confident. You're like, I'd say you're.
I get more passion merchants. I think, like, as far as passion goes, when I see a big 6 side, my chest hit me. My guys, chest is here always. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I kind of said it in the last pod. I mean, we're still the Arsenal. Like, forget that. Everybody listening. I mean, what's this idea that even with injuries that we're going to sit there and not be confident on a team, by the way, that we've had a fairly decent record with at the Emirates, especially at the Emirates. I mean, from my perspective, you've got a new manager coming in, Liverpool, who have played decently well with favorable fixtures, are now approaching a team who are in the ascendancy. And ironically, we are more like prime Liverpool than Liverpool are right now. And what is there to be afraid of? You can be cautious. You can sit there and respect your opposition, but be afraid. Behave yourself. You are a team that has been in 2 title challenges in the last 2 years. You are a team that consistently takes the most points out of the top 6 in the last 18 months. You're allowed to have chest. I don't care who's missing. And, the one thing that we have to do is respect the game, respect the fundamentals, and we will sit there with a positive result. And I'm sitting there with my chest out right now. I think we go and we start to do something very special on the weekend. I think Mikel made mention of it. Trust me, they're going to be flying. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he's sat there and he's had a look at the next week. He's had a look at what's happened in the last week, and he said, this is the time to press. I'm convinced, mate. I think we see a very high man-to-man press. And you know what? He wants to out-Liverpool Liverpool.
Yes.
For a very Mikel is a sick person with narrative, like me, and I think it's brilliant, and I think it's the right call. Arne Slot, like the few times I've watched Liverpool, it's been a very slow build-up with a pivot midfield that he looks to draw and bait opposition to create false or kind of faux transitions to quickly spring. But it's a very slow build-up. And
Yep.
for me, I think a man-to-man press is going to suffocate them. I don't think they've experienced that this season, period. And I think
Yep.
when you put them under pressure, whilst that's Arne Slot's intention, they haven't been great at it.
Yeah.
There's this idea that because Liverpool have got excellent results, that they've been brilliant. I don't really buy into that. And I think that when you put them under pressure, which Chelsea exposed for me, by the way, they are a team that's culpable. And we are a
Yes.
team with very good structure who know what we are, who know our identity, and factually Liverpool are learning theirs. So no,
Yes.
let's sit there as fans and be confident. And you know what? I think that you can respect your opposition, but at the same time carry justified chest and listen that you are the standard that the league will look to. Believe that. If you don't believe that that we're going to win the league, then cower. Then I understand. If you don't believe that we're going to win the league, or you don't believe that we're even going to challenge, by the way, because Liverpool aren't a team that you're looking at and you're sitting there saying that we shouldn't be confident of beating if you want to be champions come May.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
if you're not prepared to sit there and put your chest out that you think that we have a chance about being champions in May, then be quiet. And you know what? At the end of the day, we will sit here with chest because I believe that's what the scope of this team is. And be confident. Be confident.
Mate. So remember that pre-match from Stuart McFarlane, the cameraman for Spurs? Get you in there. Get you in there now. Can we get you a free flight just for the game? Oh my god. I'm a little bit cautious, but I'm so excited for this. And I genuinely think we're gonna make it, it's gonna be a statement win. Like I'm
Yeah.
very confident about that, because I think when Arteta's mentioning about we're gonna be flying, I think he's giving a few hints on who's going to be available potentially as well. That's what I'm reading into it as well. So that's giving me, when he said that, I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. Let me think about it now and what he's actually said. And then I thought, oh yeah, Saka's going to be available. Saka's going to be available. Timber will be available. That's what it felt to me. You know, that we're going to have some of our stars back and ready to play this game. And I think the Calafiori one's interesting, because I think from the reports that came out in Italy, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems likely that he's out now for Sunday, unless you disagree.
Although it's weird because they say it's weeks, which implies a very low-grade injury. And I'll tell you from just experience, that's a daily evaluation. Like nobody knows. Like he could be ready as far as Preston. He could be ready as far as the weekend. I mean, he's avoided major injury.
Yes.
And that's what I think they're reporting. And so from that point, it's going to be tightly held to your chest. And look, understandably, I think Calafiori is also somebody that is afraid of any major and pain. Understandably so, by the way. There's a little bit of, he had an injury that he almost was threatened never to walk again. So I get it. But I do think that he escaped. Like when you do scans like that, you just do it to confirm no major injuries. So don't be surprised. Let's put it that way. He may well be out, but I wouldn't be surprised if we even see a surprise there. But maybe this is fun. Really quickly, do you want to do quick scenarios for your backline? Because I feel like a lot of people are asking.
Yes, because there was one from Space Time. He was mentioning about Rice and whether we should put him at centre back. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the scenario of we have no Calafiori.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no Calafiori to start with.
Okay. And again, I'm going to repeat with the context. I am not Mikel, and I'm not guessing what Mikel will do. Okay.
Yes.
I'm doing what I would do. And okay, no Calafiori, and I would play Miles Lewis-Skelly. I'm just going to come out and say it.
Yes.
I would play Miles Lewis-Skelly, and I would play Gabriel White at center back, and I put Timber at right back. And I would have that be and I would have Declan Rice in the 6, and I would have him, in the 8. In the 8, and I would have Partey in the 6, and he would be flanked by Miles and Timber, who are very springy, very progressive interiors. And in terms of the press, that is a very springy midfield that could easily, if Gabriel, by the way, gets sucked out, because a lot of people are sitting there and saying the left back will be against Salah, and I don't agree. It's going to be Gabriel.
Yeah.
You're going to push Miles into the hole, and I think at least that's the way I would see it. And so from my perspective, that's how I would tackle Calafiori missing.
Yeah, it'll be the role will just swap. So
Yeah,
Gabriel will be following Salah, and Miles will be picking up whoever he needs to pick up in that specific zone. Whether that's
absolutely.
supporting Saliba with not Saliba, sorry, supporting White with Darwin Núñez, which it seems likely to happen. That's what will happen. But I completely agree. I tweeted out and I put emphasis on my 11. My 11.
You
That's
have
right.
to.
For those who
Honestly,
cannot
people
read,
can't read.
it's so frustrating. It's actually so annoying. Like. Oh yeah, but that's a different topic. And I would go for Miles because, and then the argument that people put is, oh, it's too soon. He's not ready. But then let's have a look who we have available, right? If you play Jurriën Timber at left back, fine. But then the consequence is that you then move Thomas Partey out of the engine room and you move him wide. And for me, the big issue with Thomas Partey at right back is the fact that 1v1 in wide spaces in isolation, I don't have the confidence that he's going to be able to get the better of, whether it's Diaz or Gakpo. I remember, I've seen many times Thomas Partey when he's dragged out wide. João Pedro's a really good one, actually, against Brighton. In a couple of
Yeah,
scenarios, he gets beat very easily. Thomas Partey's best work comes in central spaces. That's where you see him kind of being able to hoover up second balls at his best. He's not someone who's strong 1v1 out wide. So you not only take Thomas Partey out, who, by the way, is our best midfielder in terms of form so far,
yeah.
and you're taking him out of the engine room and you're moving him into an area of the pitch that could exploit his weaknesses. So that's why I don't agree with Timber at left back in the scenario where Calafiori's out injured. And I think Miles Lewis-Skelly, people go, but the other options are you have Kivior and you have Zinchenko if they're both fit. Kivior, I don't want to see him 1v1 against, in settled play, against a Salah in that specific situation if that occurs. And likewise, we've seen the story with Zinchenko twice. We've seen it twice now. I'd rather go for someone like Miles, who has, by the way, had really good cameos. And also, I think the soft factors, sometimes you don't understand the impact it has on the fans to see a Hairlender start in a game like this, genuinely at home, prime time as well, 4:30 kickoff on a Sunday, live on Sky Sports.
Yeah.
Genuinely, it can make a massive difference. And you know him better than I do. It just feels like Miles, he won't shy on the occasion. He seems like he will thrive from it. And even if it's against, if he's found in a scenario where he is 1v1 against Salah, he will still relish it. He might not get the better of him there, but he'll relish it. And for me, that's where we know his qualities, but I think his temperament and from what I see from his mentality, I think
He's a
he'd be
massive
ready for
leader,
it.
mate. Like he does work in the Arsenal community. He's a reference for a lot of these youngsters, and he's a very loud, boisterous, talkative player. I mean, for goodness sakes, getting the yellow card like he did off the bench to go and deliver tactical instructions should
Yeah,
tell you everything about what his mentality is. And
yeah.
so, I think from a perspective of mentality, it's not an issue, but also just play style. Like, mate, he's one of those players with those long legs. So even if he does get beat, I back him to recover enough.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at these options, right, the one issue is there might be some calls to whether or not you shift Timber there and have Partey at right back. But again, the
Mhm.
impact of taking your most informed midfielder out of the midfield in a team that's looking to press is far greater than the
Yeah.
upside you'll get in 1v1 defending security from Jurriën Timber, where Miles may lose 2 duels out of 8 and Timber will win you all 8.
Yeah.
Whereas in
Yeah.
midfield, the pressing triggers will be far more impactful in terms of creating space for Slot to get the ball to Salah. I mean, I look at it from a perspective of clamp the service, clamp Salah. Don't clamp
Yes.
Salah. You cannot
Absolutely.
clamp
Yeah.
a world-class player.
No,
I don't
you
care
can't.
if
Yeah.
even Jurriën Timber, I guarantee you, look, he did a brilliant job. I'm not trying to take away anything from him. But if Barcola had received another 3 or 4 1v1s
He
against
would have
Timber,
beaten him a couple of times.
he
Yeah,
would have
he
done
would have.
it. It's
Yeah,
just
he would have.
it's world class play. Like, so
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
going to happen. So the idea of a coach should be to clamp your service into your world class players
Yeah.
as opposed to clamping the players, because world class players will always make a fool out of you.
Yeah.
Always. So
That's really important to know. And I've always felt like we need to normalize a player getting beat. Normalize it because
completely agree.
quality dictates at times. Even if your fundamentals are top notch, quality sometimes will dictate. And that's really, really important to stress. And this is where I think having Thomas Partey in the middle of the park, having Declan Rice there as that high pressing number 8, and by the way, it is the most complex role in the team in terms of pressing duty. You give yourself the opportunity to suffocate Liverpool and keep them in their own half. You keep them in their own half. You mitigate the supply line to a Salah, to a Diaz. And Arteta, there's a really good segment from the All or Nothing documentary that someone posted, and I quoted, and he mentioned how when a team's building out and you funnel them wide, he mentioned that from that scenario, if they're able to access the half space and the opposition player is able to receive it facing play and turn, he was like, fine, you're going to be fined £500 or £1,000 if that happens in training. Because what he means there is if you funnel a team wide, you've got them in that area of the pitch. You've compressed the pitch and you keep them there. If you allow a player to recycle the ball in, it then allows for that fast switch. And when that fast switch happens, we've seen what Virgil van Dijk, for example, can do. We've seen what Trent can do. They're going to ping it to Salah. And then in that scenario, we're struggling. We are worrying because he's now 1v1 and he's facing someone. But you can mitigate that by having your best pressers in their best positions. And this is why I think Thomas Partey and Rice, it's so important that they're together. And as much as I really like the look of Mourinho and I think he's going to come good, I don't think it's the game for him yet because, like we've alluded to, he's learning the triggers. So, yeah.
And it's also because Liverpool function with a pivot this year in which the pivot shifts side to side to create superiority for the fullback to spring forward. So what they do is they travel. So whether you play to the right, the pivot will travel to be a backboard to create space for a long ball. And they want to work it to Trent. So the first pass never goes to Trent. It goes to the pivot, which then goes back to Trent, who releases, or goes back to their other fullback, who releases. So from a perspective, you're actually, not only are you helping yourself defensively, you mentioned a really good point about being wide, but also, mate, when you're wide, you only have one angle. You have the touchline as your defender.
Yeah.
So it's a really important aspect on both ways for me. And yeah, I think we're both aligned in kind of the approach. And I think if for Mikel to fly and allow for a high press, you need your springiest options across the pitch.
Yeah.
So that's also where Miles actually is a benefit over a Jakub Kiwior or Zinchenko or other options that Mikel is most likely to do that I wouldn't agree with. I think that employing your most springy 11 is important to a tactic that is man-to-man.
Yeah, yeah. No,
he is cheeky, knowing what he has in the tough behind him. That's what you should say.
We did speak about Alex. We spoke about this. So I said he's taking too much off the top. He's actually so infuriating. I hate it. You tell someone, take a little bit. Just take a little bit off. That's it. Just take because I like to have volume on my hair. I like on the top. I like to have like volume because then I can play around with it and mess around with it. I can't do anything with this. It's so short. God. And then do you know what it is? It's like I just can't. I can't sit there and go, I don't like this. Because they always go at the end.
I had this conversation too. Are you not so afraid of your barber that you can't tell them that they screwed up? Like
I can't say it. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And this is what I also don't like talking to the barber during when they're actually doing it because you need to focus. Forget about all this small talk. You need to focus. It's one wrong step and it's over.
So true. It's so true. Barbers need a psychology degree. I think that's actually men's therapy is the barbershop.
Yeah. And they have it's the worst football chat you'll ever get as well. It's awful. It's like I've lied so many times that I don't like football. I don't watch football. Just don't watch it. Just sit in a box. Don't do anything in life.
You're killing me.
No. But going back to the game quickly. So, what would your 11 be if there is no Calafiori and no Calafiori because we obviously know Saliba's suspended. So
kind of like what 11. I said. I do Miles, Gabriel, White, and Timber for the back line. Now, if you did, if you had no Timber, then regrettably, you'd
have to move Partey.
I'd have to move Partey back. But okay, I might have a controversial opinion. I wouldn't have Marino.
Oh,
and it's against everything I've said. And it would be Jorginho. And the reason is because he had such a brilliant performance at the Emirates last season, and he understands the triggers.
Ridiculous. Yeah, he was so good.
And I actually think having a better physical profile doesn't matter if you don't know where to stand. Yeah. And And so right now, unfortunately, whilst I think I would like Marino there, I do have a controversial opinion with basically Miles and Partey next to Jorginho. He doesn't have to run, would be my logic.
Yeah, yeah.
And
No, I
so
hear that.
yeah, and then Partey can be higher up, and Partey can be the main one. He'll have to do a lot of work, but I would actually have that.
No, I hear that. I hear that. What would your front three be? Because you've given me
Uh,
Rice. So in that scenario, you've got Partey right back, Rice, Jorginho, and then I'm guessing obviously Saka, Martinelli, Havertz. Would you play Trossard?
exactly.
Go Trossard.
No,
Just
no,
go Ethan.
yeah, I
I'm the
would,
same, George. It's not
I
gonna
would,
happen, but I'm the same. I'm the
I
same.
would, I would.
We know it's not gonna happen. If he's not gonna start him against Leicester or Southampton or Bournemouth, he's not starting him in this game, isn't it? It's just so
Yeah.
frustrating, man. It's so
So basically, in terms of Marino, where he stands, where he stands right now is very different to where he
yeah,
will stand ultimately. But like where he has stood now is ironically in the right central midfielder. But when you're looking at trying to press, he's been pressing as part of the front too. But what we're looking at is in terms of covering the front pivot, that's going to shift
yeah,
to side to side. So it's a very different pressing role. It's pressing from deep as opposed to leading the press. And
yeah,
right now, even leading the press, he's got people backing him up. So it's actually less information. So
yeah,
when he's as part of the front two, which is what he's done previously, he's actually looking to just funnel play to the wings. That's the
yeah,
pressing instruction if you're part of the front two. Very rare do you have to press from midfield to mark players. It's
yeah,
actually you just forcing and guiding play to an area for your
yeah.
fullbacks to
That's it.
step up
That's it.
into or others. And so, but if you're at left central midfielder with Declan, he has to choose when to step to the pivot, when not to step to the pivot. And he's not
Yeah,
just guiding
yeah.
play, he's guiding triggers. And
And
that's the
it's
difference.
that's the and the key is the key with the left centre mid in our structure is that so if as Arnie Slot, if they're building up excluding the goalkeeper with a flat 4-2, you know, our left centre mid will stand in between the pivot to begin with. He will stand in between, and then if we then have number, our right-sided midfielder, our number
Yeah.
8 Erdegaard role, then jumping to funnel the play towards the left, then Rice or whoever it is will then move towards the ball side pivot player. You know, and
Yeah.
that will be from the opposition point of view, that will be their left centre mid. Their left centre mid. But then if they move the ball towards the opposite side, Rice then has to shuffle across towards the opposite pivot player. But the key here is that sometimes they might even have to press the centre back if certain other players have moved around due to how Liverpool move us around. So that's the other thing. But the key is to anticipate when they go long, because you need to, in that role, you need to understand the way that they're kind of orientating their body to kind of signal they're going to go long. And then you've got to get on your bike and you've got to look to compete for that second ball to support your back line, you know, to give them that level of that advantage, that numerical advantage to allow you to win that second ball, increasing the probability. There's so much to do in that role.
So there's two real big worries with Liverpool that people need to keep an eye on. Nunez, I guarantee you, will play potentially at left wing, and he will be the other outlet, and it will be Salah. And the
Yeah,
balls in behind will be in between our eights and the anchors. So
yeah,
you're going to have to protect the space there. And when you look at it logically, that's essentially like saying, okay, you've got Thomas Partey as your fullback in that hypothetical, but then you've got Ben who can step up at right center back, and you've got
yeah,
two very springy players to defend that half space, which is where the ball is going to be funneled into the channel with.
yeah,
Then you flip it on the other side, and you've got Miles and Declan as opposed to Miles and Marino.
yeah.
And now that's two players that are unfamiliar with pressing triggers.
Yeah.
So it can be an issue at that
As
point.
we saw with Marino and Sterling, you know, in certain
Yes.
situations against Bournemouth, you know,
Yeah.
it kind of get a little bit messy, and teams are very smart. They're able to kind of maneuver around uncertainty from specific players. So, yeah, I think the team that I would do is very similar to yours. You know, I would go if it's no Calafiori, it would be standard Raya, Timber, White, Gabriel, Miles Lewis Skelly, Partey, Rice. Ethan, I would go for Ethan personally. It's not
Mhm.
going to happen before the comments say, I know, and then Saka, Havertz, and Martinelli. And the reason why I go for Ethan is because very quickly. Now, one of the big triggers that we do, no matter what team we face, when the winger jumps on our wide centre back, in this case, it would be Jurriën Timber. that is the trigger for our number 8, our right centre mid, to then drift out wide to receive, because then it creates a scenario for the opposition where if the number 8 is pulling outside of the block and he's receiving, then you could drag the pivot player, the near side pivot player towards you, and then that can open the centre. And we've seen Kai Havertz receiving the ball a lot in these areas, which he's done really well, by the way. But I always think to myself, imagine that was like Ethan there. Imagine that was Ethan there, and we could keep Kai a little bit higher up, and we have Ethan driving with the ball and then making that next step, making that next decision in the final third. I've always thought that, and I always felt that's perfect for Ethan. It's not going to happen, but yeah, I'd definitely go for that. What I think Arteta will do, this is what Arteta will do. I can read him like a book, this guy. He's going to go, if there's no Calafiori, he's going to go Raya. He's going to go... Oh, I had the team in my head. Completely lost it now. But he's going to go White Gab. He's not going to play Kivior at right centre back. There's no way in which he's brought him on against Bournemouth and he put him there, then he subbed him off. I cannot see that happening. So I think what he would do is you'll go Timber, White, Gabriel. If Zinchenko's fit, I think he'd go Zinchenko. I have a feeling he would do it. And then,
to be fair, he did well at the last Emirates game, bar the goal. He did do well.
Against Liverpool.
Yes.
Was it last? Yeah.
At the
no
Emirates,
Salah though, George. No Salah. There was no Salah though.
I know.
But he did play well. Partey, Rice, Trossard, Saka, Havertz, and Martinelli. That's what I think he'll do.
Yeah. To be fair, also, like, I do want to give. Not that I just keep shitting on Mikel. Like, I think Trossard does play very well versus Liverpool traditionally.
He does. Yeah.
And so does Martinelli, and so does Havertz. You've got those three that I think should have very good games. They traditionally do.
Yeah. No,
but look, the other perspective is, like, again, he trusted Miles to come on ahead of Zinchenko, who clearly was fit enough to make the bench. So it's just, you never know, like, this. At the same, this is such a post hoc analysis where you're like, of course, hindsight. On one hand, I could totally see him play Zinchenko, and on the other hand, I could see him play Miles. like in both situations, it's so annoying.
The thing is that the reason why I'm not getting drawn too much into it is because this guy fooled me with the Ethan sub against Spurs. When he brought him up, thought, okay, this is the moment now, because usually you'd think Arteta in this sort of game state where we're not able to control the game with the ball, we're looking to kind of see it out and be comfortable defending deep in our own half, which, by the way, is another Miguel Molina small snippet of information. One of the big things that they have instilled in the DNA is being comfortable defending deep. You'd associate Arteta going for a Kivior, bringing a centre back and going more of a traditional back line with out-and-out defenders. But he brought on Ethan. But it didn't really mean anything since these last few games. We've not really seen him. So, it's just, I don't want to see Zinchenko, George. I don't want to see it. We've seen this script so many times. I'd rather Salah rip Miles Lewis-Skelly in a 1v1 and score rather than see him do it to Zinchenko again. Like,
I agree. There's actually a part of that. I agree. You know what it is, too?
Yeah.
Like, you feel like there's a level of learning that's possible. and
exactly.
And there's just an emotional connection to basically see somebody fail by the same thing that you've seen for the last 2 to 3 years that probably frustrates you. And it's the case with Zinchenko has slowly, unfairly creeped into unfair criticism from me, at least. Yeah. Every time I see him, I'm like, it's done. That's my emotional reaction with it.
There's certain things he does, like going to games that, like, it feels like sometimes when it's like early Havertz days where Havertz was making a poor piece of play in possession, there's like massive groans. And certain players don't necessarily get the same level of groan. I'm telling you now, the groans that Zinchenko gets sometimes now, they're like very, you can hear it. You can hear it. You can actually hear it. But yeah. Score prediction?
3-1, the Arsenal. Hit me. Guys, my chest is here. 3-1. I will repeat it for anybody that didn't hear that. 3-1.
3-1. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going 3-1 as well.
Yeah. No, I'm confident. I'm
By
confident.
the
I
way, have
think
you
it's
ever been as annoyed last season than the goal that we conceded there? We absolutely dominated them that first half. And then just before halftime, oh my God, I thought, oh my God, what has happened here?
and against them too, where I sat
Yeah.
there and I was just like, no, no, like this deserved a 2-0. This
Yeah.
performance deserved a 2-0 start. And yeah, we got to tell him to buck up. Ain't no draws happening here. We
Ain't no
come to
trouble.
win.
This guy, he's a wimp, and he's an absolute wimp. Such a wimp. Hey, Alex.
But
So,
before we
couple
go,
of
should
questions.
we? Yeah, should we do? I
Couple of
was just
questions.
gonna say, should we do some questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Yeah, let us know, and we'll do a few, and then yeah, we'll be heading off. So yeah, anything, just hit us, hit us, hit us. Oh my God, I think my chair is making a lot of noise this stream because I keep moving around.
Just
It's
getting
like really.
excited.
So- oh
When
man.
you get the squeak chair, it'll be like the difference between how excited you are and enthralled in the conversation. That's what it is. If we don't hear
Yeah,
squeak,
that's
it means that we haven't had a good conversation.
no. When it's like when it's like proper squeak, then this is like I'm so ready for this game. I'm so ready, so
Oh my
ready.
goodness.
Oh, so I've
Um,
got a question here from SE. What influence will Martinelli have in the game on Sunday? What do you reckon, George? Do you think he's going to be a key figure?
him and Trent is the
Yeah,
equivalent of Rashford and Ben White. It's a matchup that
I like that.
Trent doesn't like,
Yeah.
So I think that Martinelli will do really well. And you know what? I really not just think and hope, but I think it would be so good for him to score like back to back and be involved in really two winners almost in a sense, like contributing to the team. He needs to get back that feeling in the squad. And I think he'll have a huge influence. I think he'll be a really primary trigger for us getting up the pitch. Like even if Saka is to make it, Martinelli will be our threat to get out in terms of what we do. And I think we'll attempt to break with Martinelli more often. Whereas if we're in the final third, we'll try to break through with Saka. But I think to actually get us up the pitch, we'll try to have Martinelli help with that.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I completely agree. I can just sense it. I can just sense those moments in which we provoke them to come onto us. We bait
Yeah,
pressure and then we release him behind. Martinelli in that channel, he always cooks against Liverpool all the time.
yeah.
Like that axis between Kanate and Trent in between that, he always does well. So yeah, will be interesting. Don't worry about that. Has asked, are we worried? Well, is it wise to start White in this game who's carrying a knock? I do really feel for, so like Ben's not had the best start to the season, but I always kind of like push back on like leveling my criticism because it's quite evident that he's carrying a knock, like he's injured,
No
and
doubt.
that's the context. But yeah, and he's obviously not going to be fully fit for the game. But yeah, would you worry about that, George? At
I'd
centre back.
worry I'd worry more if I asked him to cover large spaces.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's about putting him in a position that he's key and he's doing things that he wants to do and he's comfortable to do. Because I think there was a lot of actually really interesting moments where him and Gabriel Jesus did really interesting off the ball work together, and he's somebody that really knows the system quite well, and that's going to be important for a team that unfortunately is losing quite a lot of their system players. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to find a way for him to play. And it's going to be worse than having somebody who's a bench player who isn't as confident in those triggers replace him. I think there's more risk of something going wrong there.
Yeah. No, I think he's gonna have a big game. Got a
I think
feeling.
a big game. Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
He always steps up.
When was the last time he played at centre back for us? Like nominally, I think it's the end of the 22-23 season. Like back
Yeah.
end when Partey had to play right back. We had those games against. I remember the last game against Wolves, we played
Hmm.
Ben at centre back. Actually, you do see more of his progressive qualities at centre back.
It's going to come back. His range. It will remind people of his distribution, I think, actually.
There's always that moment. Do you remember against Aston Villa where he drives through, he carries it like 50, 60? That was crazy. If you've got any comments that you like, George, any couple?
Oh wow,
That
I've got the power now too, eh?
yes.
I think
Good
you know
man.
what, this is a good one as King Nerd. Can we get to Gravenberch on the high press? I think it's important.
Yeah,
that we do or we don't. I think that's going to be where the game's decided, and it's why I want Declan Rice there. I think it's so important.
100%. Yeah.
Gravenberch has been their best player, so nullifying that supply is key to stopping Liverpool for me. How about you?
No, I completely agree. And this is why we spoke about it already in terms of, we can leave ourselves a little bit weaker in one of the wide spaces, i.e., for example, Miles Lewis Skelly, 1v1 out of possession, let's say in that scenario, we can mitigate that scenario by being strong high up the pitch in our press and not allowing players to turn face play and then isolate their forwards against our back line. So for me, Declan Rice has to play as that high pressing number 8 in this game. He is the guy who can trouble Gravenberch, who I've actually got a bit of a soft spot for him. I really do like Gravenberch, but
I highlighted him before. I liked him
did
in
you?
the profile.
Yes. See, that's synergy. That's synergy. But
well,
he's had a really good start to the season, to be fair. But I think Declan Rice is the guy who can disrupt him. And
well, it's going to be important matching the legs there, at least, because he's somebody that can turn and take the ball in the half turn and carry.
Yeah.
And so stopping that is going to be key. But I know Alex has something. So, Rohan, if you were the coach, would you approach things game by game, or would you take things in periods or batches in terms of planning and prepping?
Well, my plethora of coaching experience, absolutely zero coaching experience. But I think for me, if we look at the context of Arsenal, and again, I always go back to that Miguel Molina lecture because that's there's a lot of good knowledge there. And he mentions how, when you're managing a team like Arsenal, they're going to be a lot of games coming thick and fast because of the number of competitions that you're going to be facing. So there's not time for you to look at the details of every single team. But what there are things you can do is look at certain triggers that happen no matter who you face, and then being in a situation where you know what to do there. For example, I mentioned it many times. If the winger presses our wide centre back, our number 8, if we're looking at our right-hand side, if the winger presses Ben White, if he's playing at right back, then our number 8 needs to drift wide to receive the ball to get into space. If a team is pressing in a flat 4-2-4 shape, we can go a little bit more zonal to start with Rice standing in between the pivot players. If they then start to move one of those pivot players a little bit higher up, it provokes us to go a bit more man-to-man. So there are certain things that teams do naturally, especially nowadays where I think the game is becoming so much more positional. I mean, we're seeing teams like Southampton who most likely are going to go down this season, but they're looking to bait and provoke pressure and play through the lines. And this is a team that has just came up from last season, came up from the Championship. There's things that you can just do naturally, regardless of who the team you're coming up against. So I think you have to look at what a team is going to do, and then have yourself being in a situation where you know what spaces to occupy there. But there's always naturally going to be specific details that one team does that another team doesn't. And I think that's where you have to prepare for those small details. But generally, you just have to keep it very broad. And
I think as a coach, again, not to sit on the fence, but you do look at things both in batches and game by game. Like naturally, you're going to have specific instructions towards different players of note. I mean, there's just different matchups very clearly. People have different strengths. Every team has their own strength. So you do talk to individuals to a level, but I think broadly, you definitely look at patches as overall game plans. So for example, if I'm sitting there and I'm deciding to press, I do look at opponents within the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I see if we've got a big game that's going to require a lot of pressing, then I'm going to look at areas when I can press more than if I'm looking at a really big game in a cluster of games that are fairly easy where I expect a lot of the ball. And I'm much less willing to be intense in my press in that big game because I have the legs and I've had the ball most of the other games. So there's areas that you go batches. But of course, I mean, I'm going to have a lot more instruction for whoever plays left back against a Mohamed Salah than I will if you were facing, a Richarlison or something else down the line. So I think it's a little bit of both for sure.
No, completely agree. I think we could finish it there. It's a lot of comments. Enough comments. Finishing off with Nancy Penny, and I've really enjoyed this, George. It's been really good.
It was brilliant, mate. It was good. It was good to come on and talk about some dating advice. I mean, if Alex is in the chat, mate, we're looking for your profile next match, and
he will be quizzed next week. He'll be quizzed.
You will, And we want to
Yeah.
see whether the advice has given you a date. We're going to measure our progress, not in terms of point wins, but in terms of total dates accrued.
So
That is
and
the
if he
TCP
hasn't,
Live.
if he hasn't got anything, then we have to take responsibility. I have to take responsibility. You got to hit. I've got to. You just. Yeah. Oh man. No. It would be really good. Yeah. So Alex will be back next week. But no. Loved it, George. And we're obviously going to have many more pods to come.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's going to be. It's really exciting. The Cannon Podcast. It's a very exciting time. So much new content coming out, as George knows, in terms of obviously main pods, instant reactions. You've got.
You've
I think
got
it's
a
the Wednesday
brilliant.
thing.
Yeah. We've got the Wednesday thing, but I think you've got a really brilliant pod coming up that everybody should be really excited for. I mean, Rohan's going to have a little bit more responsibility to go and sit there, and we've duplicated our names, because here at the Cannon Podcast, what we don't do is we don't want to recruit too many people with different names, so we just recruit our names. And
we like familiarity. Familiarity.
And so I think there's going to be a George 2.0 that's going to come along. And I think you guys have a really exciting pod coming up. So make sure you guys look out for that. And of course, we've got our main pod that we'll probably discuss on the Sunday or Wednesday. Probably, or not the Wednesday, probably the Monday, actually, because the game's going to be on Sunday. So I wonder if we'll have time to record it. But yeah, I think on Wednesdays, we typically do our tactical section between scouted or rewatches. And guys, I think I've seen a couple comments, so just really quickly to address it. Babs is absolutely still a part of the channel. It's just a case of him trying to find flexibility in his schedule. He needed to focus a little bit more on himself as well as his content, which we totally understand. So it's kind of a case of us like accommodating that. And we're really excited because we've got a lot of new initiatives coming out, and the content machine keeps on rolling. So I'm excited about that.
No, really excited. It's a really good time. And
I'm so sorry about this. I am in the middle of like a skyscraper. So if you see the light here, and that's why I've been changing. I've been trying to find like good light because the sunshine keeps going at different directions to me. So apologies for that. We'll get the ring light eventually.
You look good no matter what, George. It doesn't matter about the background.
Oh, thanks. Look at that.
But no, thanks guys for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure you like. If you like the content, make sure you subscribe, and do all that standard stuff. I don't usually say that. Me and Alex don't tend to say the standard stuff where make sure you like the video, subscribe, share, etc. Nah. It's just very chilled, but no, it was really good. Really enjoyed it, and no, I can't wait for Sunday. And I can sense in that main pod, it's gonna be good vibes.
It's gonna be fireworks. And you know what, you guys, everybody out there, before we sign off, get some chest out, okay? And remember who you are and who you represent. You represent the Arsenal. You represent a team that is going to be, at the very least, a title contender in the season. For me, title champions. So you go there and you act that way. You go there with chest and you sit there and you get the game by the scruff of the neck, play to your principles, and we will get a positive result. I am absolutely positive on that.
I'm looking forward to that Gabriel Reducer challenge on Salah. First 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes.
Cruncher.
Not condoning injuries before people say just a reducer. A reducer that doesn't that maybe injures him for the game and then he's fine afterwards. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. A reducer that injures him for the game and then he's fine afterwards. So then we're not really being too. Actually, I don't want to dig myself in the hole here, but yeah, reducer. Get a reducer in there. All right. Thank you all. We will see you next week. We'll see you on Thursday where Alex will be back. And till then, peace.
Peace.